It's Mountain Monday, and you know what to do. Breathe in and out, and breathe in and out. And this Mountain Monday is going to be about a big topic. It's in part based on some of the stuff that came up in the live feedback Friday, some things that people started talking about near the end ish, and then just sort of general stuff because I don't want to sort of make it irrelevant for a lot of people. But those of you who have been watching this channel for a while and participate actively know that it's a pretty eclectic bunch here. And there's people from a lot of different belief systems and factions and everything like that. And I've been talking a lot about the importance of seeing the other side. I know, it's like Sisyphus and the rock. Everything is one steps forward, two steps back lately when it comes to empathy. And I much prefer the term empathy to tolerance because I've never liked the term tolerance. You tolerate a sore throat, you tolerate a rash. You shouldn't think about tolerating people. It's just the wrong headspace of the whole thing. The same way I prefer inclusion to diversity, because the whole idea of diversity focuses on difference instead of focusing on why people are, what the commonalities are. And it really is a headspace. And unfortunately, for various factors that we've talked about a fair bit, the video game community right now and nerd communities in general are really negative places. And I've found that people don't have the ability to think inclusively. It can get really lonely thinking from this perspective, because it seems like so many people in video games and comic books and any sort of discussion involving superheroes are fixated on what they oppose as opposed to what their values are. And so they're constantly in search of some sort of enemy that they can rail against so that they can prove what a great person they are. And some people say that's virtue signaling, that they're trying to show the world what great people they are. I think it goes deeper than that. I think it's trying to show themselves that they're on the right side, as if there is a right side. Instead of going, I am a liberal, therefore I believe this, and this, and I oppose this, and this. I go, okay, my personal bias is more aligned with liberalism. My political opinions are just that, opinions. They're not identity. And I think that the first step towards truly inclusive thinking is stepping out of that I am a liberal or I am a conservative and starting to think of it more of my personal opinions more align with these schools of thought. Because once you do that, you don't have to worry about whether your friends are liberal or your friends are conservative. And it always kind of strikes me funny when people say my conservative friends or my liberal friends. When I say my Republican friends, I mean they're actually members of the Republican Party, right? Like they actually do work with the party. I'm not just saying they're conservative, because the first thing that makes people so wonderful to me is that people are not simple. A lot of people have done very well pandering to those more extreme fringes of the internet because they're motivated. And this is the thing I kind of envy about internet extremists, is they do support their people. They do. And this is where, inclusion versus diversity really kicks in, because to me, inclusion is all about supporting what you're for and hoping that you can find morals in common. You can find opinions in common with other people and use that as a jumping off point to build a certain amount of consensus and understanding in another person. And that's very different from this idea of diversity, which is very fixated on difference and the idea that cultures are different and people are different. And what I've found interacting with a lot of different types of people is that even though the lens for their various ambitions and desires may be very different, the core of, the hierarchy of needs is essentially the same. If people aren't, secure in food and shelter, they're not going to worry about anything above that, and so on and so forth, right? And that's why I think we get stuck on identity, is so many people aren't, identity is supposed to define in adolescence, but we've so demonized the process of seeking out identity through adolescence because of the whole antisocial behavior thing, which is, it was a part of adolescence. When I was growing up, you do things, you make mistakes, you screw up, and you learn, and you don't do it again, and you decide that's not me, and so on. The problem is now, if you happen to make those mistakes on the internet, they never go away, and this unforgiving element of the internet is, I think, completely counter to truly inclusive thinking. You're constantly posturing from a position of fake superiority. Because, everybody talks about forgive and forget, forgiveness. We don't talk about what forgiveness actually does and what it actually means. And it's actually this very poorly understood concept. And I think that's part of what is driving so much of this culture war, is that we talk about forgiveness and everybody will say, yes, it's a good thing, it's important to forgive, but the process of effectively forgiving is actually hard, and it involves a lot of communication, and you have to understand what happened before you can forgive what happened. And you can't, I don't find I can force myself to forgive someone. It's a process, and sometimes it takes longer than others. And it's a point that you have to get to, because otherwise all the resentment eats you alive. Hatred, as safe as it feels in the short term, is actually quite damaging, because it builds up and it takes a lot of energy. And part of coming into adulthood and figuring out who you are is learning sort of what you will and won't accept and where your boundaries are, because if you don't know where your boundaries are, you can't really forgive anybody. You don't know the point you have to get back to. And so, there's this whole thing of, oh, let's make up in a 22-minute sitcom episode. Let's just say, I'm sorry too. And then you guys have all seen what happens next, right? There's this public apology, but then they go back to their private camps and they gossip because they're really, first of all, they really weren't sorry. They thought they had to apologize for something. And you can tell by the structure of an apology whether somebody really means it. I apologize if anyone was offended is not sincere. You're actually apologizing for something you can't control, which means you're taking no responsibility. You can't control if somebody else gets offended. I apologize for making a statement I now realize was offensive is taking responsibility, because that means you see the point and you agree that this statement should not have been said. Saying I apologize if anyone was offended, first of all, is conditional, and second of all, is kind of a screw you, grow a thicker skin. But you see this in public all the time. You see the damage control apologies take the form, I apologize for any offense I may have caused. I may have? No, that's dishonest. You know you offended people. That's why you're forced to apologize. It's not sincere. And so we've been given all these examples of insincere apologies. And then we wonder why they don't work when we replicate them. I mean, it's pretty much a common thread when you look through. Truly inclusive thinking goes, don't apologize unless you're really sorry. Create accountable apologies because they mean so much. And you don't apologize only if you're going to get a good result. You apologize because you know you were wrong. You do that for yourself as much as you do that for the other people, because if you can't admit to yourself that you were wrong, you don't tend to change. And change is an important part of growth. The problem is now people are never allowed to make a mistake. So we have an allergy to personal growth. Because if you grow, you grow. Now you flip-flopped. And we have all these stupid political tactics invading the discourse of actually improving things for other people. And it's infuriating to people like me who have managed a certain amount of upward socioeconomic mobility, knows what it takes, knows how hard it is, and know it doesn't have to be this hard. And merit has a lot to do with the potential for upward mobility, especially in lower income neighborhoods. And the problem is that the modern job market and the modern market of opportunities is not at all about merit. And I think this is something we can all agree on, because look at all the fringe groups of the internet. They all exist because these people feel like they've been wronged. And you can argue the facts of the whole thing, but you can't argue that feeling. I think in most of the cases, that feeling is absolutely sincere, that they feel like they've been wronged. And you need to get to the bottom of that feeling before you can start saying, okay, I know what it feels like to feel that way. I know what it feels like to feel that things are unfair. What can we do about that? People do the best they can. They start their own business. They get a job working with their hands. They pull themselves up by their bootstraps through blood, sweat, and tears. And it's totally understandable to start lecturing them about white male privilege. You're going to get a very bad reaction because they didn't have the same opportunities that people in their adolescent peer group had. And so it's not going to ring true to them. And that's completely valid, because privilege is a complicated thing that we try to oversimplify. And all that comes down to is people want to listen to people they feel are listening to them. And that's the core of sort of an inclusive thought approach. It's not that difficult, but it's slower. It's not going to get you a few million followers on Twitter. It's not going to get you a few million subscribers on YouTube, because YouTube's all about the drama, right? But what it does is give people a place where they can feel safe in their individualized identities. And I really, really think that's the first step, because at the end of it all, people are not their race. People are not their social economic bracket. People are not their sexual orientation or their gender identity. People are individuals. And I mean, that's the whole purpose of intersectionalism, is the understanding that everybody draws different things from the different aspects of themselves. And two people may look identical on paper, but assign much greater weight to the various aspects of their background. For one person, race may be exceptionally important. For another person, gender identity may be exceptionally important. And they can have the same race and the same gender identity, but they don't weight them the same. And I think if we start focusing on people as individuals and celebrating people's individual stories, no matter where they're from, and recognizing that we can celebrate the uniqueness of each story without being afraid of difference. Because at the end of the day, we all want the opportunity to tell our stories and have them treated as valid. That's the beginning of an inclusive approach. And this comes from people, how does this tie into anything I said off the top? And I'll make this really clear, and then we'll wrap up. It's that I was really touched by comments some people made in the chat on Friday about continuing to fight a 2-year-old fight because they'd been so thoroughly invalidated and they were still seeking validation. And that's an intractable problem. And yeah, I'm being vague because I think that the nature of the invalidation is not relevant to this discussion. The feelings, the totally understandable feelings behind it are. And too often, people's viewpoints are simplified to the point that they become absurd. They are absurd caricatures of what they really believe and what they really feel. And a lot of people in gaming have felt that they have been negatively caricatured. And that's a lousy place to be. I know that because I inhabit that space a lot. I mean, the regressive left and the alt-right both can't stand me. I have someone not just insulting me, but actually attempting to perform character assassination on me on an almost daily basis. And I don't know, you guys, I'm completely worn out by it. It is discouraging. It is disheartening. It is exhausting. So I get it. And what I'm trying to do here, and the reason I am so focused on no two people agree on everything, is because if someone is asking me to validate all their various opinions on a given subject, I can't give them that. That's just not realistic to expect. But what I can validate is their passion for the subject, or I can validate if they brought up something I hadn't considered. I can validate that. I can validate their worth as a human being. And that's what I try to do here, because there would be absolutely no progress. There would be absolutely no innovation if people agreed on everything. And we are getting this stifling, right? We're getting this stifling in game design of everything is better graphics, better graphics, better graphics, better graphics, because that's the only thing anybody can agree on. It's objectively easier to determine good graphic, not so great graphic, as opposed to what's a good story? What's a good level design? What's a good gameplay mechanic? These things are highly subjective because different people intuit things in different ways, and different things feel natural to different people, right down to something as simple as Halo and Gears of War style shooter control schematic, or Call of Duty style shooter control schematic, or inverted axes. I go when I pick up a controller and somebody's inverted the axis. And it was funny because at X16 I went, gross! And some guy next to me says, hey, we're people too. And I kind of laughed because, yeah, I mean, that's in microcosm, but yeah, there's nothing inherently wrong with inverted axes. I just got slaughtered by zombies right off the bat because it wasn't doing what I expected it to do. But people fight to the death over the righteousness of a control schematic. So I think it's really important to factor this in and discuss this and keep things in perspective. And I think the first step to that is that opinions that are different from yours can still be valid at the same time that yours are valid. And that comes from a place of personal security that gets eroded by character assassination and personal attacks and all that stuff. And that really sucks, because the very nature of our dialogue right now is making us less capable of having adult dialogues. So what do? Well, it starts with me, and it starts with you, and it starts with us collectively. We can agree that here we're going to do stuff in a healthy, grown-up way, and that doesn't mean we're not going to be passionate about things. You guys know I feel quite strongly about the Halo control scheme. But we can keep it in perspective, and we can have enough sense that we're okay thinking what we think to think it's equally okay that somebody else thinks something else. And so I hope that everybody found this useful. Let's close out. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.